Welcome to this special presentation on the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV, a truly historic moment for the Catholic Church and the world. On May 18, 2025, in the heart of Vatican City, the Church welcomed its 267th pontiff, and for the first time ever, the new pope is from the United States. Known previously as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, Pope Leo XIV brings with him a unique blend of American and Peruvian heritage, a deep missionary background, and a pastoral heart rooted in humility and service. His rise to the papacy comes just weeks after the passing of Pope Francis, whose spiritual presence was felt deeply throughout the ceremony. In this video, we'll take you step by step through the most moving and meaningful highlights of this historic Pope installation, from the solemn prayers at St. Peter's tomb, to the vibrant Mass at St. Peter's Square, and the emotional moment when he received the Fisherman's ring and the Pallium. These ancient traditions aren't just ceremonial. They carry powerful spiritual meaning and symbolize the weight of the office now resting on Pope Leo's shoulders. We'll also reflect on the Pope's message of peace, gratitude, and unity in a world longing for hope. So stay with us as we explore the spiritual depth, global significance, and powerful symbolism behind the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV, the new leader of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. 1. The new Pope takes the stage. On a crisp Sunday morning, May 18, 2025, the eyes of the world turned towards St. Peter's Square as a historic chapter unfolded in the heart of Vatican City. The inauguration of Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope in the history of the Catholic Church, began at precisely 10 a.m. local time, ushering in a new era of leadership, hope, and spiritual renewal for more than 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide. This monumental pope installation came just under a month after the passing of his beloved predecessor, Pope Francis, who died on April 21 due to complications from a stroke. The emotional weight of his absence was deeply felt throughout the ceremony. Yet, amid sorrow, there was a sense of continuity, of a church moving forward with reverence for its past and faith in its future. A global gathering in St. Peter's Square. As the sun rose above the majestic columns of Bernini's colonnade, thousands of faithful pilgrims, clergy, and dignitaries from across the globe gathered in the sprawling St. Peter's Square, waiting in anticipation. For many, the moment carried spiritual weight beyond description, a convergence of centuries-old tradition, sacred ritual, and renewed global relevance. Among the crowd were notable figures: Prince Edward, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, representing governments and their people at the highest level. Each presence was a reminder of the Church's enduring influence in diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and interfaith dialogue. Pope Leo's inauguration was not merely a ceremonial formality. It was a profound spiritual declaration, a public acceptance of divine responsibility. The atmosphere buzzed with reverence, hope, and a quiet intensity that suggested history was indeed being made. The solemn beginning, a visit to St. Peter's tomb. Before the grand liturgy began, Pope Leo XIV, accompanied by his cardinals and bishops, descended into the grottos beneath St. Peter's Basilica to pray at the tomb of St. Peter, the apostle regarded as the first pope of the Church. This act, though unseen by many, was perhaps the most sacred moment of the day. It symbolized the spiritual lineage that stretches from the shores of Galilee through 2 millennia of Church history to this very moment. The new pope knelt silently, asking for guidance, humility, and strength to serve as the spiritual successor of Peter, entrusted with the care of souls and the stewardship of truth. The procession to the square. From there, the Pope emerged in a humble yet dignified procession toward the altar in St. Peter's Square, flanked by a multitude of clergy and Vatican guards. The crowd erupted into warm applause and tears as Pope Leo waved with modest grace, wearing white robes symbolic of peace and purity. A homily of humility and hope. When the time came for the homily, Pope Leo spoke with a calm yet confident voice. His words, carefully chosen, addressed the pain of the Church's recent loss and the pressing needs of the modern world. He began by acknowledging the legacy of Pope Francis, saying, "The death of our beloved Pope Francis filled our hearts with sadness. But his spiritual presence is here today, guiding us in silent prayer." He then added, "I was chosen with no merit of my own. The conclave placed this call in the hands of God, and I now place my life in his service." The crowd listened in hushed awe as he outlined his vision, a church of joy, service, and unity. He spoke of healing divisions, standing against prejudice, embracing the poor, and challenging economic systems that exploit the vulnerable. His words, "Servant of your faith and joy," rang out across the square. He concluded by quoting St. Augustine, "With you, I am a Christian. For you, I am a bishop." The message was clear: this pope would be a shepherd first, a servant always. Communion and benediction. The Mass continued with the distribution of the Holy Eucharist, led by the Pope himself. As he offered the body of Christ to the faithful, a deep stillness came over the crowd. From the rows of dignitaries to the pilgrims who had traveled thousands of miles, each soul shared in the unity of faith. When the final benediction was given, and the choir sang in Greek, many in the crowd had tears in their eyes. They had not just witnessed a ceremony, they had witnessed a sacred covenant made visible. An unforgettable beginning. As the new pope exited the altar and made his way once again through the square, the applause was thunderous. The world had watched the installation of Pope Leo XIV, not just as a religious rite, but as a global event, one filled with spiritual significance, cultural symbolism, and a renewed vision for the future. The Catholic Church, rich in history and rooted in tradition, had taken another step forward. The first American pope had taken his stage, not with grandeur, but with grace. Not with a crown, but with a fisherman's ring. Not in power, but in prayer. And in that moment, the world saw not just a new pope, but a new beginning. 2. The fisherman's ring, a seal of apostolic authority. The sun was at its peak when the moment came, quiet yet thunderous in its spiritual resonance. Amidst the grandeur of St. Peter's Square, and before a sea of faithful hearts from around the globe, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, standing with grace and reverence, stepped forward and placed a single golden ring on the right hand of the newly elected Pope Leo XIV. This was no ordinary ring. It was the fisherman's ring, one of the most powerful and symbolic objects in the life of a pope. In that moment, with one simple yet sacred gesture, the papacy of Pope Leo XIV was sealed, not only in the eyes of the people but in the spiritual lineage that stretches back more than 2 millennia. This act did not require thunder, fanfare, or words. It spoke through history, through symbolism, and through faith. And it reminded everyone present that the papacy is not about status, politics, or prestige. It is about servant leadership, drawn directly from the call of Jesus Christ to a humble fisherman by the Sea of Galilee. A ring woven with centuries of meaning. The fisherman's ring, or annulus piscatoris, is far more than an adornment. It is a seal of divine commission, a mark of succession, and a sign of spiritual governance. The tradition dates back to the 13th century, though its spiritual roots go back even further, to the very first pope, St. Peter, who was called by Jesus to leave his fishing nets behind and become a fisher of men. Originally, the ring was used as a signet to seal papal documents and official correspondence. Carved into its face was an image of Peter casting a net from a boat, symbolizing the Pope's call to gather souls into the kingdom of God. Over time, the ring evolved from a functional seal into a powerful symbol of apostolic succession, the unbroken chain of spiritual leadership handed down from Peter to each new pope. Its destruction at the end of a papal reign also carries meaning. When a pope dies or resigns, the ring is ceremonially destroyed, a practice that underscores its singular purpose and reminds the Church that the office belongs to God, not man. Each pope receives a new ring, unique to his pontificate. Thus, when Cardinal Tagle placed the fisherman's ring on the hand of Pope Leo XIV, it wasn't just a formality. It was the embodiment of centuries of faith and fidelity, passed from one generation of shepherds to the next. The design, simple, yet deeply symbolic. The ring given to Pope Leo XIV was crafted from solid 18-karat gold, cast in a traditional oval face, and engraved with the image of St. Peter throwing his net from a boat. Below the image, the Latin inscription LEOPP14, PP meaning Pontifex Pontificum, or Supreme Pontiff, was delicately etched. Unlike more ornate designs seen in past eras, Leo's ring was understated, a reflection of his character and vision for the papacy. It communicated strength without arrogance, beauty without opulence, and tradition without rigidity. The gold itself holds meaning. Gold is incorruptible, enduring, and pure, symbolizing the eternal nature of the papal office, even as individual popes come and go. The imagery of Peter casting his net, meanwhile, is a constant reminder that the Pope's mission is one of evangelization, inclusion, and spiritual harvest. St. Peter, the original fisherman. The significance of the fisherman's ring cannot be understood apart from the life of St. Peter. Born Simon, a fisherman by trade, he was one of the earliest disciples called by Jesus. In the Gospels, Jesus tells him, "Follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men." It is Peter to whom Jesus later says, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." With these words, Jesus established Peter as the first leader of the Christian church, not a king, but a humble man entrusted with a profound spiritual task. That identity, as both flawed and chosen, makes Peter the perfect model for every pope. He denied Jesus 3 times but became the rock upon which the church was built. He walked on water but also sank in doubt. He was a man of courage and of weakness, of faith and of fear. The fisherman's ring, therefore, does not represent perfection. It represents faithfulness in spite of imperfection. It is a sign that the Pope, like Peter, is called to serve, not as a ruler who lords over others, but as a servant leader who lays down his life for the flock. Cardinal Tagle, a symbolic choice. That the ring was bestowed by Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a Filipino prelate known for his humility and deep pastoral care, added emotional resonance to the moment. Cardinal Tagle is regarded by many as a bridge between East and West, tradition and progress, authority and mercy. His own journey from the Philippines to Rome mirrors the universal nature of the Church today. When Cardinal Tagle stepped forward to place the ring on Pope Leo's finger, it was not just a gesture of ecclesiastical duty. It was a passing of the torch from one visionary leader to another. The connection between the global South and the new Pope from North America spoke volumes about the Church's direction, diverse, global, and unified in mission. The moment of placement, reverence and silence. As the ring was placed upon Pope Leo's hand, a holy stillness fell over St. Peter's Square. The choir fell silent. The breeze stilled. And thousands held their breath. Though the act itself took only a few seconds, it felt suspended in sacred time. The new Pope bowed his head slightly and kissed the ring, an act of humility and surrender to the role he had accepted. Around him, the cardinals watched with solemn expressions, aware that they were witnessing not just history, but a divine mystery unfolding before them. A ring the world will see. Unlike many ceremonial objects, the fisherman's ring is often seen by the public. When the Pope greets world leaders, visits the poor, blesses the sick, or writes encyclicals, the ring is always present, its golden glint a subtle but powerful reminder of the authority he carries. In past centuries, it was tradition for Catholics to kneel and kiss the Pope's ring as a sign of respect for his office, not for the man himself. Today, while such customs are more relaxed, the meaning remains. The ring points beyond itself, to Christ, to Peter, and to the mission of the Church. For many Catholics, seeing that ring is a reassurance. It says, we are not alone. We are part of something bigger than ourselves, connected through time, space, and faith. Authority, but not power. It's important to understand that the fisherman's ring is not a symbol of unchecked power. In the Church, true authority is always apostolic, meaning it is derived from the apostles, commissioned by Christ himself. When a new pope receives the ring, he is not crowned as a monarch. He is consecrated as a servant. The ring binds him to Christ's mission, to Peter's legacy, and to the people of God. It does not elevate him above others, but binds him to them more deeply. This distinction matters, especially in the modern era when institutions, including the Church, face growing scrutiny. Pope Leo XIV's acceptance of the ring, deliberate, prayerful, and simple, sent a message to the world: I am here to serve, not to rule. A personal reflection from Pope Leo. Later in the day, during an unscheduled moment with seminarians from the United States, Pope Leo spoke briefly about the ring. He said, "When I felt the weight of the ring on my hand, I thought of Peter, tired, unsure, called from his boat to follow Christ into the unknown. That is how I feel today. Humbled, and yet filled with peace. This ring is not mine. It belongs to the Church, to Christ, and to the generations that will come after me." It was a vulnerable statement, one that revealed the depth of his interior transformation. Pope Leo, a man once known for his intellect and quiet resolve, was now visibly moved, visibly changed. A sign for our times. In an age marked by division, uncertainty, and rapid change, the Fisherman's Ring is a timely symbol. It reminds the world of the enduring mission of the Catholic Church to go out into the deep, to cast the net of love and truth, and to bring souls into communion with God. As wars rage, economies falter, and technology accelerates, the role of the Pope, as symbolized by that golden ring, takes on deeper meaning. The world doesn't just need policies. It needs moral leadership, spiritual vision, and a voice that reminds us of our shared dignity and destiny. Pope Leo's ring may be small, but it is mighty in meaning. It speaks not only to Catholics, but to all people seeking truth, justice, and peace. A ring, a mission, a legacy. The Fisherman's Ring has now passed to a new bearer. Pope Leo XIV will wear it for the remainder of his life. And when his time comes, it will be destroyed, only to be remade for the next in line, as the eternal mission of the Church continues. But for those who witnessed it, May 18, 2025, will forever be etched in memory. It was the day the Church received not just a new Pope, but a new Fisherman, one whose hands are now marked by a ring that binds him to the Gospel, to Peter, and to every soul under his care. (3) The Pallium, unity and humility draped in wool. In the centuries-old liturgical drama that unfolds during the solemn inauguration of a new pope, few symbols are as deeply embedded in the narrative of humility, sacrifice, and shepherding leadership as the pallium. Woven from the wool of lambs blessed on the feast of St. Agnes and crafted with reverence in Roman monasteries, the pallium is more than an ecclesiastical garment, it is a profound theological signifier. And on that momentous day in St. Peter's Basilica, as Pope Leo XIV bowed to receive the white strip of wool on his shoulders, millions around the world watched a living symbol of Christ the Shepherd come to life. The symbolism and origin of the pallium. The pallium, in its liturgical function, has roots that stretch back to the early centuries of Christianity. Derived from the Roman toga, it originally denoted status and dignity. Yet in the Church's hands, it took on new meaning. No longer a mark of imperial authority, but one of pastoral service, unity, and spiritual burden. Made of pure white lamb's wool, it is shaped like a Y and draped over the shoulders with two pendants hanging down, one in the front and one at the back. Each pallium is adorned with 6 small black crosses, and on this sacred occasion, 3 incorporated pins of pure gold were inserted into the fabric. These pins represent the nails that pierced Christ's body on the cross, serving as a chilling yet reverent reminder that Christian leadership is, at its core, a path of sacrificial love. As Pope Leo XIV stood at the center of the basilica, bathed in sunlight streaming through the alabaster window of the Holy Spirit above, one could not help but reflect on the enduring power of this moment. He was not merely being vested with wool, he was being cloaked in history, theology, responsibility, and the invisible weight of unity. The choir's Greek hymn and the universality of the Church. Adding to the emotional gravity of the moment was the choir's rendering of a Greek chant, echoing the Eastern traditions of the early Church. It was a deliberate and moving liturgical choice. While Latin remains the official language of the Roman Church, the use of Greek, especially during the pallium ceremony, harkens back to the original tongues of the early Christian communities and underscores the universal character of the papacy. This decision also highlighted Pope Leo XIV's commitment to ecumenism, a cause dear to his heart long before he ascended to the papal throne. As the Greek words of praise and supplication filled the basilica, the symbolism became multi-layered, east and west, ancient and modern, the apostolic and the pastoral, all converging on the frail but resolute shoulders of one man. A cloak of responsibility. When the pallium was finally placed on Leo's shoulders by the senior deacon, he bowed his head, not in mere ceremony, but in what seemed to be authentic submission to God's will. Unlike other ceremonial garb that highlights glory or triumph, the pallium is humble in its simplicity. It speaks not of conquest but of caregiving, not of prestige, but of pastoral endurance. The Pope is often referred to as the servant of the servants of God. The pallium makes that clear in stark theological language. It reminds the faithful that while the Pope is vested with supreme authority, he is also called to be the chief shepherd, one who carries not just the joys of his flock but also their wounds, doubts, and sins. Leo's face, as seen on the giant screens outside the basilica and across news networks worldwide, was telling. This was not the smile of a triumphant monarch, but the quiet resolve of a man who had just received the Church's most ancient call, "Feed my sheep." Saint Agnes and the Lambs of Rome. Behind the pallium lies another tender symbol, the Feast of Saint Agnes, celebrated each year on January 21st. On this day, 2 lambs are brought to the Church of Saint Agnes outside the walls, where they are blessed in a ceremony filled with innocence and reverence. These lambs are then sheared, and their wool is woven into the pallia by the nuns of the Basilica of Saint Cecilia in Trastevere. This wool, taken from creatures known for their meekness, further connects the Pope with the image of Christ as the Good Shepherd, who leaves the 99 to find the one lost sheep. For Pope Leo XIV, who had spent much of his episcopal career ministering to the marginalized and advocating for migrants and the poor, this symbolism was especially apt. As the lamb's wool lay over his shoulders, it was as if the cries of the voiceless, those on the margins of the church and society, were whispering to him, urging him to never forget them. Unity with the bishops of the world. Traditionally, pallia are bestowed not only upon the Pope but also upon newly appointed metropolitan archbishops, as a sign of their communion with the Holy Father. By receiving the pallium in public during the inaugural Mass, Pope Leo XIV was also reaffirming his commitment to unity not just within the Vatican walls, but across the global Church. In a time when the Catholic Church is increasingly diverse, stretching across continents and cultures, the pallium represents the invisible thread that binds all bishops to Peter's successor. It is not a chain of control, but a cord of love, linking thousands of shepherds to a common mission, proclaiming the gospel in every corner of the earth. It was telling that Pope Leo chose to speak briefly, even during the solemnity of the pallium rite, about his hope for a renewed global episcopal fraternity. He emphasized listening, accompaniment, and discernment as core themes of his pontificate. In doing so, he was already beginning to reweave that global tapestry of unity that the pallium so quietly, yet powerfully, symbolizes. An echo of Benedict, Francis, and popes before. Observers could not help but draw comparisons with earlier moments in papal history. When Pope Benedict XVI received the pallium in 2005, he described it as a yoke of friendship with Christ. Pope Francis, too, emphasized that it represented the shepherd who carries his sheep, especially the weak and the sick. Pope Leo XIV, in that same vein, appeared to embrace the pallium not as an honor but as an invitation to suffer with, and for, the Church. His papacy, though only just beginning, already bore the scent of the sheep, a phrase made popular by Francis but now incarnated anew. In this ancient woolen vestment, there is no room for vanity. There is only the humble recognition that to lead the people of God is to bear their crosses, listen to their stories, and weep with them when they weep. A moment etched in time. Outside St. Peter's Basilica, the crowd, the diverse and electric, fell into a reverent hush as the pallium was placed on the Pope's shoulders. Pilgrims from the Philippines waved flags, recalling Leo's birthplace. Delegates from Africa, Latin America, and Eastern Europe bowed their heads. A group of young people from South Korea held hands in silent prayer. Cameras captured it all, but what lingered was not the visuals, it was the sacred weight of the moment. This wasn't just a vesting. It was a consecration of purpose. The world, increasingly fragmented and frayed, watched as one man was symbolically stitched into its very fabric, not as a ruler looking down, but as a shepherd walking among. Humility in an age of noise. Perhaps what struck many watching, especially those disenchanted by political chaos and institutional distrust, was the countercultural humility of it all. In a world of grand speeches, spectacle, and relentless self-promotion, the quiet draping of a woolen band on the Pope's shoulders spoke louder than any oratory. Leo XIV didn't need to say much. The Pallium said it for him: "I am with you. I am one of you. And I carry you." A papacy already defined. Even before the final chords of the Inauguration Mass faded, commentators noted that this ceremony, particularly the Pallium rite, had already begun to define Pope Leo XIV's style of leadership. Quiet yet unshakable, humble yet authoritative, deeply spiritual yet profoundly attuned to the needs of today's world. He had not yet issued an encyclical. No papal bulls had been proclaimed. But in the image of a man bowed beneath a band of wool, a vision of the Church emerged, a Church that leads not from above, but from among, not with dominance, but with presence. The Pallium's enduring echo. In a papacy that will be watched with both anticipation and scrutiny, the moment Pope Leo XIV received the Pallium may go down as one of its most defining images. A ritual spanning millennia, performed in mere minutes, became a bridge between the apostolic past and a hopeful, shepherd-hearted future. The Pallium, draped in silence and sacred intent, whispered the essence of true Christian leadership: not to be served, but to serve. And in that woolen symbol, soft, unadorned, and heavy with meaning, Pope Leo XIV took his first true step not as the ruler of a city-state, but as the shepherd of a global flock. A flock that would look to him not for commands, but for courage, not for perfection, but for presence. And so the Pallium hangs, not just on his shoulders, but in the imagination of the faithful everywhere, reminding them that, even in the grandest ceremonies of Rome, the heart of the gospel remains disarmingly simple: love, sacrifice, unity.